Hello and welcome to Learning Music with Pat. I spent my last session with you talking to you about how to put an instrument together and keeping it safe, how to do it right so you don't injure the instrument, so you don't do any damage to the instrument. But I never really quite finished it because we kind of ran out of time. So I'm going to start today and I'm going to show you some charts. I have planned to do it last segment, but we'll do it this segment, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the saxophone. So we'll start off with these charts that I have here. What I talked to you about was the clarinet, and I brought in a clarinet. I still have it here, and I pointed out the various parts of the clarinet. But you may not have seen one of these. This is an alto clarinet, and this, I'm assuming, is going to be a bass clarinet. Some of these instruments are very, very large. The clarinet is pretty large. This is a lot larger. Now, you can't go by relative size here because what I did was I took photocopies and I put them together. This is going to be quite a bit larger than this, and this is going to be quite a bit larger than this. But look at this. It bends over. This whole piece bends over. That would be a neck piece. And this here would be a bell. It has all the same kinds of fingerings as this have. And as a matter of fact, there is an A consonant clarinet, which I do have. I didn't bring it in today, and it looks exactly like the B flat. The only difference between the A concert clarinet and the B flat clarinet is that the concert A is just a little bit longer. You'd never know by looking at it. If you put them side by side, it would be obvious it was a little longer. But just by casual looking, it looks exactly like a B flat, a clarinet, but it pitches to an A. It pitches a half step down lower than an A, and it's a concert A clarinet. It's not usual to find them, but you can find them. And the first clarinet I ever had, when I was taking music lessons on clarinet, my father bought me that, not realizing it, that it was an A. And so when I went in for my music lesson, of course, we discovered that it wasn't pitching the same as a regular clarinet. It was a half a step lower. Now, when I was in college and I was doing a concert in college with the rest of the college band, I sat beside another clarinetist. I happened to be doing clarinet that day, and he was beside me, and he had a solo that he was going to do that was encased within that piece that the whole orchestra was playing, and I was playing it too. And he was kind of a braggart. He kept on telling me how good he was, and he kept on giving me instructions on how I should be better, which is a lot of nonsense. I could play like he could, but he was just a very proud individual. When it came to his solo that was within the scope of a piece that the whole orchestra, including myself, was playing, he was supposed to play it on a B-flat clarinet. He grabbed the wrong clarinet. He had an A clarinet, and he played that whole solo, which was several lines long, a half a step off pitch. Now, if it had been me, I would have marked the clarinet so that I knew which was which, because they do look exactly alike, or placed them in such a position that I knew where the A clarinet was, so I'd make sure that I grabbed the right one. He didn't do that. Or I could have put it down and grabbed the right one and continued on the solo on the right one. People would have understood he had the wrong instrument. They do look exactly alike, and there wouldn't have been any problem with that. That would have been a good thing to do. But instead, he continued to play the whole solo one half step off pitch. Now, it turned out that the band got quite a kick out of that, and they were kind of giggling and laughing. Now, the only reason they were doing that is that he was so proud of himself because he thought he was so good, he couldn't conceive of himself making a mistake, and it was time for him to be taken down a peg, and that basically did it. So, he could have corrected it himself, but he didn't. So you do have an A clarinet that's just a little bit bigger and one half step down, but you would never know the difference until you start playing it, or you put it beside a B flat, or you've marked it in some way. And then, of course, here you have the alto and the bass. Let me go on to the next chart. This is another sketch of the alto. And I've marked the way that it is. Here's the mouthpiece up here, the neck piece, then you have the upper and the lower bodies, and you have kind of a significant bell down here. Let me take that down. Now we get to the saxophone. Now the saxophone is my major instrument. I've had more training on it than the others, but I've had a lot of training. This would be a tenor. And you notice that this is a neck piece, and it crooks down a little. This is an alto, an E-flat alto. Now the tenor is quite a bit larger than the alto, but because of the constriction of space, I mean, we had to photocopy them in such a way that they could both squeeze on one page. So don't consider that this is relative accuracy in terms of the size. It's not. The tenor is huge. This is an alto. You notice this is the neck piece right here, and it just goes straight out. This is the tenor, and there's a little crook in it. Now, I don't know how well you're going to see this, but there's a little kind of a key that rests on top of the neck, and it has a little round pad and a key on the end of it. That's the octave mechanism. And you would press a key in the back, that pops up a little, and that's how you get your octaves. It would be same here. This is going to be the body of the instrument. This is going to be the bell. It's quite a significant bell on both of them. So you have the mouthpiece, you have the neck piece, and then you have the body of the instrument, and then you have the bell. And those are the parts of the saxophone. Now, let me take this down for a second so I can show you the baritone sax. The baritone saxophone is huge. There's just no getting around it. I probably couldn't hold it well enough to play it because of the fact of its weight and its size. Look at the size of the bell. See how huge it is. Look at all of this contraption. Why do you have all of these curves and then it juts out with the mouthpiece here? How come? If you didn't have all those curves in it, then that would have to go straight up, and it would be much too tall. So when you find an instrument that has a lot of curves in it, like the trumpet has, it has the 3 valves on top, but the trumpet has all of these little curvy areas. I don't have a picture of it. The instruments that have all of these curves in it, it's compensating and giving it extra space so it can play deeper tones. Because the longer the tubing, the deeper the tone is going to be. And this is an example of what is happening. And the instrument is very, very large. There's also a bass saxophone that is even bigger than this, but I just wanted you to see it. Now, I happened to bring in, I didn't bring any of my saxophones. I did bring in this little thing. It is an electronic saxophone, and it does play. I'm not going to play it today, but it is accurate in terms of the things that are on it, so you can understand more about the saxophone. I did have it in once before, but this would be the mouthpiece right here. And if you look right here, you're going to find there's a little screw and a little gold part. That would be reminiscent of a ligature. On an instrument like a saxophone or a clarinet, you have a ligature. It's a little metal piece, usually silver, but it's a little bigger than this, of course, and there's a screw on the bottom, and that's the way that you screw in the reed to the mouthpiece. Then there would be some cork here, and that gets easily put on. And you'll notice this here. Now, most of the time on a saxophone, you do have on top a little piece, and that's the octave mechanism. You press a button on the other side. There's a little key here. If I can place it so you can see it, and it pops up, and that's how you get the octaves. Then you have a lot of side keys. This is the body of the instrument, and this is the bell. This was taken after a tenor saxophone because of the crook in the neck piece. So remember, for the parts of a saxophone, you've got the mouthpiece, you've got the neck piece, right here. The octave mechanism is right here. There are all kinds of keys and pads and rods, just as I showed you on the clarinet, all kinds of them. And then if I put it this way, you have actual keys on the bell of the instrument. This one does. There are 3 or 4 keys on the bell of the instrument. You would play them by using your right hand on these lower keys, these fingers on the lower keys, and they open up. And one of the things that's true about this is the fact that most of those keys on the lower part of the bell do have kind of a frame around them. You know, they're protected. They have a frame around them. So this is a fairly accurate in many ways, the way that a saxophone is built. I have 5 or 6 saxophones in my collection, and I have about 3 that are really rare. One of them is a soprano saxophone, which is so little. I mean, it's about this big. I want to bring it in someday so you can see it. They don't make them anymore, I don't believe. And I also have a tenor saxophone that is kind of halfway between a tenor and an alto. And they're not made anymore. They haven't been made for a long time. But somebody gave me theirs, and somebody restored it for me. And it's a beautiful instrument. You can't get mouthpieces for them anymore. They're just not made. So I have a number of very, very rare instruments, and I would, as time goes on, like to bring them in. The only thing is they're really heavy, and I can only carry so much. So this is kind of a representation of a saxophone, a tenor saxophone, but the parts are alike in many ways. And it, as I said, it's an electronic saxophone, and it does play, although I'm not going to play it here. I just want to show you the parts of it. Now, there is cork on the saxophone. I showed you on the clarinets what it is. And it would be right here where the mouthpiece gently goes in. You would put the reed on the mouthpiece, you would screw it on with a ligature, which is, this is kind of a representation of it, and then you just gently put it on the neck piece. And some of my instruments that are made out of bamboo, some of the rare instruments that you don't see anymore, they have the mouthpieces carved right into the bamboo, so it's a part of the neck piece. You can't get, you know, there's no adjustment to them. If I have to put the saxophone mouthpiece in, I can twist it, you know, in any way I want to, that is satisfactory for me for what I'm playing or what I want to play. But with those instruments that have the mouthpiece carved in, there's no adjustment to it at all. You put the reed on and you play it, but you can't twist the mouthpiece left or to the right. And of course, usually most musicians have several mouthpieces, and they have their favorites. And when I sent any of my instruments out for repair, which I sometimes did because they needed it, I would not send my favorite mouthpieces, but they'd have to have a mouthpiece available to test what they were doing, so I would send them another mouthpiece, you know, but I'd keep my favorite mouthpieces with me. So this is the saxophone, and the idea is when you put it together, you gently put it on. There'll be a little piece of cork between them, the mouthpiece and the neck piece. There will be no cork between the neck piece and the body of the instrument. And like I said before, you might want to take a little alcohol and wipe that off, being very careful not to get the alcohol on any pads. And you can never, never, never put alcohol on a wooden instrument. You just can't do it. I have a bamboo saxophone. It's been made with layers of bamboo, and the only way I could sanitize it is just use a little warm water to wipe it down with, but that's all, and that's not real sanitation. You cannot use alcohol on wood, so always remember that. If that's the only thing you remember, you may save an instrument. This, of course, is electronic. Normally, this bell, you know, doesn't have anything to close it off here. It's just an open bell. So this is it. I have a number of these little instruments that I use sometimes to show things on. If for some reason I can't carry an instrument in because I've got too much to carry, or whatever it is that maybe just too much for me to handle, and I just keep my instruments with me in my apartment and all of that. So I just want to kind of complete that. Now what I want to go into, and I don't know if we're going to be able to finish it today, but I'm going to try. And how do you get the best time out of your practice? You know, if you ask a student, are you practicing? Oh, yes, I practice a half an hour every day. And that is supposed to be acceptable. People say, oh, practice a half an hour every day. But I think a lot of times you're not getting the best out of your practice time. And there's no magic about practicing a half an hour a day. So I'm going to give you my take on how to get the best use out of your practice time. And to begin with, if you are a new student, and you're just learning how to play, I don't want you practicing very much. I will take you in on your first lesson, and as I did in the past segment, show you how to hold your instrument, how to put it together without injuring it, and how to hold it, how to blow into it, and get you so you can make noises. And then we can try a first note. But what's going to happen if you're playing brass or if you're playing woodwinds? Your lips are going to get really tired. There's such a thing called an embouchure. An embouchure is how you hold your mouth when you're playing an instrument. With the recorder, I instruct people that you put the mouthpiece in the mouth about a third of the way up, and then your top teeth go on your mouthpiece, and then your bottom teeth, you cover it with your lower lip, and then your lower lip goes on the underside, and then of course you squeeze your lip together. Now you have muscles in your lips and around your mouth, otherwise you couldn't talk, and those muscles need to be developed to hold an embouchure so you can play. And what you're going to find if you're a new student, you're going to find you can't hold on to the embouchure very long because your muscles aren't built up for it, and you're going to start feeling tired. Not your whole body, but your lips are going to be uncomfortable. No real pain, but they're going to feel like they're a little sore, they're tired, and you can't hold the position of the embouchure because your mouth is not, it's really not trained to do so. So it hasn't built up yet. So at that point, stop playing. You're not going to do any better by trying to force your mouth to do something that it cannot do because it's too tired to do it. The muscles are too tired to do it. You know, I've read someplace that for every muscle movement you make, there has to be an equal moment of rest for the muscle. And that you can't just use a muscle and use it and use it and use it and not give it a break. As you get better and you play more and more, then you're going to be able to hold that embouchure for longer periods of time. To begin with, it's going to be a very short period of time. Your lips are going to be tired. Stop playing at that point. You're not going to get better at it by trying to force yourself to hold an embouchure that your lips are too tired to hold. You're actually going to probably just get discouraged because your lips can't do it. Your mouth can't do it. So rest a while and go back to it later and try it again. And the more you do it, you know, you may only practice like a minute or two at a time. That's okay. That's sufficient. When you get better and stronger, you'll be able to play for longer periods of time. So my advice is don't try to force yourself to practice a certain period of time when you're beginning. As you get better, you will actually play longer and longer. So how do you play and how do you practice? Well, the thing is, and I'm going to put some kind of charts up here, most people practice their mistakes. You know, they get to play and they look at a piece of music and they decide to play it full on, full speed ahead, take as fast as they can, and then, of course, they're making all kinds of mistakes, but they don't stop. They do it again. They do it again, and they end up by practicing their mistakes. It is harder to break a mistake, and it takes more time to break a mistake than if you did it correctly to begin with. So I have a way of having students practice. When you get a piece of music, this is what you do at first. You want to check and make sure that you're playing treble clef, that somebody didn't make a mistake and give you an instrument that's in the wrong clef. That usually doesn't happen, but I think that it's wise to check it anyway. Then you're going to check for your key signature. Now, what is your key signature? It's how many sharps or how many flats that you have in the music. Sometimes you have changes, so you might start off with the key of C, end up with a key of G, so you watch for it. The most common types of key signatures in which the recorder would be playing would be the key of the key of C, which has no sharps and no flats, and they won't be there. You just look at the key signature and they're not there. Or the key of G, which is one sharp, or the key of D, which is two sharps, the key of F, which is one flat, or the key of B flat, which is two flats. Now, sometimes I can eke out an E flat, which is three flats, but basically speaking, these are the most common key signatures, and a recorder can do it. A recorder can fudge it. Then you're going to look at the time signature. The time signature is how many beats there are to a measure. And for something like 3/4, which is waltz tempo, 3 beats to the measure, and the quarter note, which is represented by the 4, gets 1 beat. Or you could have 4/4 time, which is very common, 4 beats to the measure, and a quarter note gets 1 beat. And you can also put a C in. That C stands for 4/4 time. It's the same thing. It's just an easier way of writing it. Or you could get a 6/8 signature, which is 6 beats to the measure, and the 8th note gets 1 beat. That's a little bit like waltz tempo. So that's the time signature. Then you want to know what the tempo is going to be. That's going to be how fast or how slow it goes. And this would be allegro. This is common. I don't have all of them. There's a lot of little signs and symbols, but I just want to give you an idea. The allegro is fast. Presto is very fast. Adagio is slow. Andante is moderate speed. And of course, there are a lot more from that. So you want to check on that. And the dynamics, now the dynamics are going to be the loudness and the softness, the expressiveness of the music, and that's dynamics. And that's going to be, this is common in most music. PP is pianissimo, and it stands for very soft, although I've seen triple P, but double P is not uncommon. P is piano soft. F stands for forte, which means loud, and FF stands for fortissimo, very loud, although I have seen triple Fs. MF is mezzo forte, which is moderately loud. MP is mezzo piano, which is moderately soft. And when you have something like this, it looks like a carrot kind of thing, and it goes from a point to wide. That's a crescendo. You gradually get louder as you play it. You start soft and get louder. And if you see it in the other direction, you start with the wider area, then you gradually get softer. That's called a decrescendo. Okay, and so, I mean, this is just an example. When you are starting to practice a piece, notice and check the clef, whether it's treble or bass clef, whether the key that it's in, the timing of it, and then after that you can start to play. But I can see that we're almost running out of time, so I'm not going to be able to finish what I'm doing this segment. I will continue with it next segment. I have a way to show you how to get the best out of your practice time, and so you don't have to spend hours and hours practicing the same things and sometimes the same wrong things, which you're going to do over and over again. If you practice your mistakes, when you play it, you're going to play your mistakes. So there's a way of practicing in which you can get the most out of your practice time, and we've just kind of begun that. But this is important, an important beginning for that, and we will continue with this next time, and we'll finish it next segment. And then I have some musical things that I want to try with you as well. So we'll close it here. Please join me next time.